So if you could turn to this page where it says area of rectangles and parallelograms, we just got done talking about area of a circle. So we are going to be going into area of rectangles and parallelograms, and we will also be doing area of triangles today. So this right here is an example of a rectangle. As you remember, area is the space or the number of square units needed to cover a whole surface. So basically, how much is it going to take to cover all of this surface right here? And it's going to look like that. That's area. Okay? So a rectangle, that's what goes here. Let's see, let me get another color. A rectangle is a parallelogram with 4 right angles. And I think you remember from elementary that you could just do length times width. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral with 2 sets of parallel lines. And a parallelogram isn't it has 2 sets of parallel lines. This right here is a parallelogram, but this right here is also a parallelogram. But if you notice, this right here isn't a rectangle because it doesn't have those 4 right angles. Okay, so if we look at this, I have a rectangle right here. The area Okay, so the area of a parallelogram is developed from the area of a rectangle. So we have a rectangle right here. If we split that rectangle in half and we kind of just rearrange it, a rectangle has the same area as a parallelogram. So the area of a parallelogram is developed from the area of a rectangle because a rectangle can be decomposed and rearranged to form a parallelogram. Now for a rectangle we did length times width. Okay, so but not often will you see length times width. You will actually see some letters that are called, let's see, put that over there, base times height. B is for the base and then H is for the height. You'll actually see that in capital letters in your formula chart. It'll say area equals base times height. And that's honestly all you do to find the area of a rectangle or a parallelogram. You use that formula. So for example, here we are going to find the area of the following. If the base is 8, I'm going to write down the formula, first part. The second part is that you have to substitute these numbers in. So I'm going to put an 8 there. And then my height is 6.5. And then I need to find my answer. Okay, so I'm going to go multiply over here to the side. Eight times 6 is 48 plus 48, 49, 50, 52. So there you go. My area is 52 centimeters squared. It does have that squared. So that's how you find the area of a rectangle or a parallelogram. You just got to know the formula. Now, if we look at this parallelogram right here, my formula is area equals base times height. Okay, so the height of this parallelogram, it's actually not that right there, what I'm highlighting right now. It's not this, that I call that the slanted height. It's not that height. The height of a parallelogram is actually how far it is from the top all the way straight down. So that is 9 3/10. So my base is 4.5, and the height is 9 3/10. So to find that answer, all I do is I just multiply. But if you look at right here, I did my formula, I plugged it in, and now I am finding my answer. So that's 45, 46, placeholder, that's 12, 36, 37, 6, 7, 8, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And that is my area equals 41 85 inches squared. Okay, so let's go do the next one, which is number 2 up here. First, you have to identify what shape it is. Well, that shape is a parallelogram. You write down the formula, base times height. You go plug in your numbers. Well, the base is 12, and the height always makes a right angle with its base. So my height is 8. My formula was base times height, which means I just multiply, and the answer to this is 96 inches squared. The formula for this one is base times height, area equals 13 times 15, then I just multiply. $595 millimeters squared. So remember, you have to write down your formula, have to write down your, like whenever you go and plug it in, and have to write down your answer. And remember that area, like you have to do like inches squared, millimeters squared, and circumference. I'm going to bring that back in. You didn't have to. So those are the notes for area of a rectangle. And this is really just a review from, I want to say, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, one of those two, because you should know how to find area from that. Okay, so next we're going to go look at triangles. Now, triangles you learned last year, okay? You did learn triangles last year. The only thing that we are going to do today is really just review, okay? So area of triangles, how would you find the area of the following shape? So just as we talked about earlier, this is a rectangle. Well, how do we find the area of a rectangle? We do base times height. I want a triangle. So what you're looking at right now is how can you get triangles from a rectangle? Hopefully you saw this right here, that you can actually just split it in half and you'll have 2 triangles. Well, I only want one of those triangles. So I want to know what the area of a triangle is. So a parallelogram, or a rectangle, I'll put a rectangle. A rectangle can be decomposed into 2 congruent triangles. So from that one rectangle, I can get 2 congruent triangles. So basically what I just did is I just split it in half. I just want half of it. And that's where the fraction comes in. If you take any rectangle and you split it in half, or you can also take a parallelogram and you split it in half like that, you're going to get a triangle. So that's where the half comes in the formula, right here. So the area of a triangle is half the area of a parallelogram. So the formula is area equals half base times height. This formula is going to be given to you in your star chart, so there's no need to memorize it. It's just really, I mean, it's best if you just memorize it, but you do have that star chart to look at. It's really just knowing how to work with it and knowing when to use it. If the shape's a triangle, use this formula. If the shape is a rectangle, we'll use that formula, base times height. Okay, so let's go look at the shapes over here. Number one, that shape is a triangle. So I am going to use the triangle formula. Area equals half base times height. First thing that you need is formula. If you don't have your formula, then you do not know what you're solving for. Area equals half. Well, the base, there's three numbers here. I see a 15, a 56, and an 8. You need to understand which numbers to choose. 56 is the base. The height of this triangle, remember I said from the bottom straight to the top. But it has to make a right angle with its base. So that's the slanted height. I don't want that one. So my height is 8. So that's what you plug in. Now I need to teach you kind of how to work with that fraction. Taking half of something is just dividing it by 2. So if I have, this is just an example, if I have 4 and I want half of that, well, that means I'm only going to have 2. If I have 8 and I only want half of 8, that means I have 4. If I have 10 and I only want half of that, I'll want 5. So right here, you can take half of 56 or you can take half of 8. It's easiest for me to take half of 8. So half of 8 is 4. These two, I simplified it down. Now you're probably wondering, how does that work if it's a fraction? You don't have to write this down, but this is how it works. Whenever I multiply fractions, I'm actually just multiplying across, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. You don't have to write any of that down, but you do have to write this down, but I'm kind of showing you where I got that half from. So half of 8 is 4. So now all that you're going to do is 56 times 4. And that is your answer. Okay, let's go to number 2. There's 3 numbers again, and I'm going to go ahead and cross out the one that I don't need, and I do not need that one. I call that the slant height, okay? So area equals half base times height. Area equals half. Can't get rid of that yet. My base, I'm going to use this one right there, and that's 8.3. And my height is 18.2. Now the area, I'm going to take half of 18.2. Now if you take half of something, remember that's really the same thing as dividing it by 2. So if I take half of that number, I'm going to get 9.1. and bring that 8.3 down. And then all that's left is just multiplication. 3, that's 27, placeholder 8, 72, 3, that's 14, 15, that's 5. And that is millimeters squared. So that is your answer. So 2 things that you need to remember here is cross out the dimensions that you don't need. For example, right now I have to scratch this one out because we didn't need it. I worked with my fraction half, and I just took half of a number. That was easy. And then that's it. Let's go do number 3. First of all, identify the shape. This is a triangle. Write down the formula. If you do not write down the formula, then you do not know what you're solving for. Area equals half. My base is 25. My height is 24. Just by looking at that, I can see that it's really easy to take half of 24. and I'd rather do that. So I'm going to take half of 24, and that's 12. So now I'm just going to do this multiplication. And I get 300 yards squared. Question number 4. What kind of shape it is it? It's a triangle. Write down the formula. The base is 18.6 and the height is 15. I need to take half of something, but looking at this, I'm asking myself, is it easier to take half of 18.6 or half of 15? Well, it's kind of easier to just take half of 18.6. It's 9.3. And I did that all by just doing this division here. 9.3 times 15. So that's 15, that's 4, 45. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 4 is 13. So my answer on this one is 139 5/10 feet squared. Okay, oops. If you need to pause this video at any time, you can, just to write down that stuff. Okay, so let me go. Okay, so these right here, same thing. Write down the formula. Plug in your numbers. In this case, it already tells you what the base is and already tells you what the height is. Remember, work with that fraction to see where it's easiest to work with. Since it's all multiplication, you can actually multiply whatever numbers you want first. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to take half of 2.8. Half of 2.8. I only want half of that. It's 1.4 times 3.6. It's 24, 12, 14, placeholder 6, 3, 504. Area equals 5.04 meters squared. Okay, so let's look at the last one. You need the formula. You need to plug in your numbers. So, half of 18 is 9, and you are just multiplying it to 25. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, which is 225 feet squared. Okay, so I would definitely like for you to look at how I showed work. Let me zoom out real quick. Okay, now, I know it's all colorful right now, but I want you to notice that where I'm highlighting, I kept it all line after line after line. I kept this all line after line after line. This one I did too. And this one I did as well. And this one right here I did as well. That is how your work needs to look like. So I am going to say your work. You don't have to write that down. I'm just telling you. Your work needs to look exactly like that. Because we're about to get into area of composite figures, and it's important that you write down the formula for every shape. You substitute the numbers in, meaning you plug in numbers, and then you multiply and then write down your answer.